super pumped and excited to present to you our next presenter, the legend himself, Mikey Taylor. Many of you, depending on your interest growing up, probably know him as one of the top pro skaters. The guy has had an incredible journey from going from pro skater to a brewery owner, having an exit on that, and now running Commune Capital, where they, do large syndication investments. He might be able to touch on that as well. Had the pleasure of speaking with him on stage at Kent Clothier's event. He also came and presented at Closing Table, which was one of everyone's favorites. The guy is super humble, super cool, super successful. And I also think he's got a really good perspective and outlook on life and all that stuff. Welcome to Quarantine Convention, Mikey Taylor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, dude, super pumped to have you on. You know what's interesting about this, and I'm sure you know it, is literally every badass that I reached out to be on this show, only one person said no. And I was expecting a lot more no's with everything going on, but it just shows that the most successful people are the most willing to give and also, have the most time, not necessarily they don't have things to do, but they'll make time to give back to the world. So I just want to say thank you to you and all of our other awesome presenters for taking the time to come on.
Of course, my pleasure. Totally. And I'm not going to lie to you. There is some selfishness involved in this. I'm a people person. I love being around people. So this is this is what I get to work with for now. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, this is as close as you get to being around people.
Yeah, it's getting me through this. I mean, we all need community. So I think in times like this where I can't be actually in public with people, this is just what it takes to push through. Yeah,
totally. Well, I kind of touched a little bit on your story, dude. I know you're gonna kind of walk us through some things. But quickly, you grew up as a pro skater. How many years were you in that profession, so to speak?
Professional skateboarder for about 15 years, skated for about 6 years prior to that. So I've been riding a skateboard longer than I have not been.
That's cool. The reason I wanted to bring that up is, and I don't know if you'll get into this part in your presentation, but you were defined as a skater to yourself and to the world. And as you had to find your way out of that business and sport, you had to reinvent yourself, and you've managed to do that a couple times now. So I think that a lot of people right now might be thinking, shit, is what I was doing before still an option? I think for a lot of us, it probably is. But for those of us that it may not be, this is a guy that's reinvented himself a few times and keeps reinventing even better. So I'll let you kind of take over from here, dude. I will turn off my camera, let you talk, and I'll be here should you need anything.
All right, I wasn't planning on talking about that, but I'm absolutely going to. I think that's really relative actually for right now. I'm going to include that. Yeah. Good to go?
Good to go.
All right, so like you mentioned, my story, I started off as a skateboarder. I went into the beer industry on my first real entrepreneurial endeavor. And then from there, I started Commune Capital, which is a real estate fund. And three things are, when I tell people that's my journey, most people are, it's like a confused look, right? It's like, wait, what? You're a skater and then you did this and it's interesting, but your journey doesn't have to be limited to what people think it can be, right? I think, society or the masses have this idea, especially when you think about skateboarders, that skateboarders are kind of dumb and don't really give a shit. And it's just they're off in their own world. And to think that a skateboarder could start a company like that, that shouldn't have happened, right? And then to go from a brewery into starting an investment group, and we're investing in these big apartment buildings. It's not ordinary for that to happen, but why isn't it ordinary, right? Why do we think that people can only accomplish certain things? Well, it all comes down to what you believe in yourself, which all comes into your head, right? And really, it's an interesting concept, because it's like the idea of you can only accomplish what you think is possible, and that is true. But why does one person thinks more is possible than the other person? It's all a belief system. So, one thing that I did really gain from skateboarding, and probably somewhat from my parents, was this idea that I could accomplish anything. And I think I just never wanted to be held down from not moving forward. So I had kind of what some would think was a unordinary path, but I think it's a testament to show that, like, your mind and what you believe is so powerful, and that's really the only thing that stops you. And the reason why I'm saying that is kind of what I wanted to touch on today was based around fear. And that's by far the biggest question I get asked when somebody goes, "Oh, you're a pro skateboarder, so you're just like fearless and crazy." And what I skated down big handrails, like things that I could have just got destroyed on, died on in a lot of cases. And when people hear that, they immediately assume that there's something different in myself to where I'm just not scared and other people are. But the thing about fear, or even like using me as a pro skateboarder, I was scared all the time. I was scared every single day. There's not a person on this planet that's not scared. When you look at somebody that seems fearless, they've just gotten to a point where fear doesn't stop them, but they still have it. And that's really what I wanted to touch on. When I was pro skateboarding, it wasn't always that way. Like I'm naturally an overthinker. Like when I look at things in front of me, I overanalyze, and I automatically go to worst case scenario, which is like the worst thing to not get stuck or held back by fear. So I had to learn it the hard way. And the way I learned it was when I was a kid and I was skating with my friends. We started skating handrails, and they were small, but I couldn't get myself to do the handrail. Like, I would roll up to the handrail and stop, and it felt like there was a wall in front of me that was physically stopping me from trying the rail. And then I would roll up again, and I'd roll up again, and everything in my brain was telling me, "You're going to do this one." And I'd get to the end of the stairs, and all of a sudden it was like this physical wall that would stop me. And the first time I experienced the wall going away was I was just so determined to get through it that I just rolled up to the rail so many times and started getting so frustrated that I think I exhausted my brain to stop working. And then all of a sudden I tried it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, okay, my first kind of breakthrough was my brain overthinks it, so I need to exhaust my brain so that it allows my body to do it. And then as I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, there was a little, hack, and now I could jump on rails. The more I started doing rails, the less time I needed to move forward on the roll-up process. So, the first handrail.
Some people might not even know what a rail is. I know you obviously know. Like, let's explain that for the people that don't get it, because it's fucking gnarls.
So a rail basically, and it's one of the things that attracted me to skateboarding. When there's a set of stairs, like, usually they put a handrail down the stairs so that you can, hold the rail as you walk down or walk upstairs. And the first time I saw somebody skateboard, I saw somebody jump onto a handrail, and it blew my mind because I never looked at a handrail as something that you could skateboard on. But handrails are so scary when it comes to skateboarding. It's like, so much can go wrong. You could sack yourself when you straddle the rail. You don't get on right, you're going down a huge set of stairs. So it's really intimidating. And so when you get to the point of trying your first handrail, that's like a big breakthrough. Like, I remember I told everybody I did a handrail. That's like, you're a real skateboarder now. But it was scary as shit. So basically, if the first handrail I did, I think I rolled up for like 2.5 hours, like without trying it, just roll up, go back, roll up, go back, and then finally tried it. And then, the next day I did a handrail, maybe it was like 1 hour and 45. And the next day it was 1 hour and 30. And it was really, the thing that it taught me was, one, the more you do something, the more comfortable you feel at it. And two, I was learning how to like trick my mind. And I think this is the big one. It's kind of talking about the thing we talked about in the beginning of your mind sets what's possible. Well, your mind also sets what's not possible, and fear, I think, being that biggest element. And I started learning ways to lie to myself. And it seems stupid, it seems like a game, but when I would look at a handrail, let's call it like a 12-stair handrail, which is a pretty big one and things can go wrong. I would look at it and go, okay, if I mess up, I could put my foot here, I could jump there, and I would create this worst case scenario, which ended in me being okay. And then for whatever reason, that gave me confidence and comfort, and then I would go and be able to do it. But if I really would have messed up, the outcome that I thought was going to happen probably wasn't really going to happen. It probably would have been a lot worse, but it was just a way for me to, get my brain on board that I was able to accomplish it, even if I was struggling believing it myself. And, some people might go, yeah, but like you're just lying to yourself. And what if you would have gotten hurt? Well, this is the beauty of it. Usually the fear of getting hurt is worse than getting hurt or the fall itself. So, we always, build up this moment in our head of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall. I'm going to break both my legs. I'm going to split my head. I'm never going to walk again. And then if you're able to actually do it, and let's say you do fall, well, it's usually a little painful, but you're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't even close as bad as I thought. I can do this. So the beginning of my skate career was more me just learning how to trick myself. Where it got harder is as you get better, you start doing more dangerous and more scary things, and the pressure of it starts weighing in on you, where you've learned some techniques and tools to get you through the initial fear part, but how do you allow yourself to still be comfortable and calm in dangerous situations? And that's one that, like, the beginning of it was like a fear, or it was like me tricking myself. And then I started learning that the more I did it, the more confidence I had. And then at the very end, it really became a system. And once I stuck to my system, then my chance of success really, really increased. And that was, if I was going to do a trick that I was scared of, and I'm going to use handrail terms, let's say I was scared of doing a trick down a 10-stair, right? Well, I would go to maybe an 8-stair, and I would do the trick over and over and over and start creating repetition to where like everything in me felt confident. And then by the time I was ready to do the 10-stair, my body just did it without even thinking. And so once I started moving into, let's call it the business world, a different type of fear implied. It wasn't so much I could fall and get hurt. Now what I was doing was I could mess up and lose all of my money and lose all my investors' money and really make a negative impact in a lot of people's lives. So that was a different type of pressure, but learning all of these tools from skateboarding that essentially taught me to recognize fear, come up with a solution on how I could get through it, and learn how to walk with fear at the side of me instead of in front of me, really allowed me to move into areas beyond skateboarding. And I think right now with, all of this of us sitting in our homes and, automatically assuming worst case scenario. And that, I think, is one of the most interesting things about fear. When you're fearful and you panic, you automatically go to this like fight or flight scenario, and you assume worst case scenario. And so when you think about it, if you're in fight or flight or you're in survival, you stop thinking, you stop becoming logical, and you go straight towards just emotional panic. And in those scenarios, you are not able to do anything positive. So in a scenario like this that we're all dealing with this coronavirus, there's lack of information, which we automatically assume as fear. We go towards worst case scenario. Our parents or our loved ones are going to get sick. We're all going to die. The economy is going to burn. Everybody's business is good. We're going into Great Depression. It's so easy to run towards the world is ending, right? So how do you stay positive in a fearful environment? Well, the very first thing is removing yourself out of that panic mode. And for me with skateboarding, that was that original trying to do a handrail. I was so fearful that everything was going wrong. Even though my brain was trying to be logical, I wasn't able to. I was in that tense environment and I could no longer think. So at least through skating, I had to start finding a system or a rhythm that brought me back to, I could do that. So in cases like this, when we're sitting at home locked up, not knowing what's going on, having a system or having a routine that gets you to a more logical standpoint is necessary. It's absolutely huge. And like, you know, to example for what I'm doing now, and we touched on this when we first started talking, how do you stay sane and confident and positive in a time where you can't leave the house and days start blending together and you're scared about the future? One thing that I did that's been really beneficial, I stay on a routine. When it's so easy to like get off your rhythm, we're like, okay, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna wake up at 8 as opposed to 5. I don't have to get dressed because all I'm doing is these video conferences. So all I really need is a shirt, and I'm just gonna like, you know, veg out, watch Netflix and stay up. In that environment, your mind is gonna go to crap. Right now, we've got to keep mental health up and keep fear down. So staying in a routine is huge for that. Telling yourself positive things. I know it sounds like, you know, the woo woo element to it, but like constantly bigging yourself up. You're going to get through this. I've got this. Same thing I had to do when I was skating. It was like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And what happens is your subconscious, you eventually just start believing whatever you're hearing. The problem is it believes it on the good or it believes it on the bad. So if you're sitting here panicking, going, oh my God, it's over. It's over. What am I going to do? It's over. Your body's going to take that and you're going to believe it. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be over. So right now, more than anything, it's like learning how to control the fear, getting out of the emotional and getting into the logical. And for me, routine's been huge on that. The other thing, and this one's kind of hard, I think, to talk about because I think our culture is so divided on this. But for me, I had to ultimately get to a point where like I had something stable to depend on, right? When, you know, you mentioned about my career ending. When my career ended, that was my purpose. That was my identity. When it changed into something else, I realized that like, okay, I no longer had purpose. I put everything, all my identity, my future was here, right? Well, what happens if that thing goes away? Well, now you're lost again. So I had to learn how to find something that ultimately I could forever hang on to in scenarios like this. And that was a point for me where like the only constant that I could ever find in an unchanging environment was God. I had to take a moment, like find faith and go, you know what? In a world that's exploding, that there's no constant, and me putting my purpose into a job isn't gonna do it in environments like this. I had to go, you know what? You have a reason, you have a purpose. I'm gonna start looking at you, and you're gonna be the comfort for me to get me through this type of crap. And that was something that was huge for me. I know like getting religious or spiritual,
hey man,
people don't like, but that was something that was huge for me. Yeah, totally. So as far as moving into different careers and for people that their careers are affected by this and possibly are looking at doing something new, this is one thing that was huge for me, is finding your purpose ultimately, right? Like with skateboarding, I thought my purpose was riding my skateboard. And when it ended, it was like my world went dark. It's like the lights turned off. I didn't know where up was. It was awful for me. And so one thing that I learned through that, and kind of what we just touched about, it's like I had to find purpose first and then find the career second. So just going through that makes it so much easier if you need to transition right now, where if your identity isn't baked into one thing and it's baked into something else, to transition isn't so bad because your purpose isn't relying on it. It just becomes a means to making money, essentially. So in times like this, I would say, look at it as opportunity more than anything. Like whenever there's pain, whenever there's uncertainty, there's opportunity in that. And if this means you were headed down one path and now you could possibly head down another one, that's a blessing. That's something new that you get to start and drive forward on. So I think like just the outlook of this entirely is gonna have a positive or negative outcome depending on what you're having. I always tend to lean towards being positive. So
I love that, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is, you know, control the fear. I think I'm always I'm just naturally I look at things more opportunistic as opposed to pessimistic. I just think it drives more upside out of everything.
So when you're feeling the negativity, you're in real estate now, right? Like this could have a big impact on what you and I do. Like, what do you do to quiet the brain and focus on the positivity, like in the moment? Is it, obviously you talked a little bit about God. Do you have certain things that you do that help you quiet the brain?
Yeah, so like 100%. So I started this whole thing telling you that I overthink things, right? When I hear news, it's like very easy to go, oh my gosh, people can't work. If people can't work, people can't pay. People can't pay. We don't have income coming in. If we don't have income coming in, how do we pay off our debt? It's so easy to go, the banks are going out of, everything's going out of business. We're going in Great Depression, right? Well, what I do, the second I catch myself going into that overanalyzing phase, I immediately have to check myself, stop, right? And for me, the comfort I get, I stop, I go straight to praying. I go, God, take me out of this. Like I'm lost in my own self. Can you just like remove this type of fear? Let me see things for what they are. And that is my reset. And then the second I look back, it's like, okay, new perspective. If I need time, I'll give myself time. Like, okay, look, go get my mind off something, go do something, come back to this, and then start regrouping and thinking. Another thing too is like having people to rely on. Like sometimes you are just in a funk and you can't get yourself out of it. So that's a point where, dude, I'll rely on 3 or 4 people inside my circle and go, hey, dude, am I looking at this? Like, I'm kind of panicking. Should I, like, what's really happening? And you'd be surprised just hearing somebody else's perspective that brings you off the ledge. And then you could start seeing things for what they are, right? Instead of panicking, thinking it's over, you start looking at, okay, if this happens and this is the worst case scenario, how do I put myself in a position to get through that? And then where does the opportunity lie? And the second you start moving from everything's falling apart, victim, 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 into this is the problem, this is the solution, you'll be surprised with how much more comfort and confidence you have in yourself in that type of environment.
I love that, dude. Some good nuggets there for all of us. So we have some time. When you spoke at closing table, you told the story of how when your skateboarding career was ending, you leveraged the assets that you had. You guys were talking about an idea. All of a sudden, the brewery came up. I don't want to tell the story. I'd like you to tell it. You leveraged the assets that you had, even though they had nothing to do with beer and a new business. And it turned into something big. And if you want, you could tell everybody that story.
Yeah. So we started a craft brewery. It was me and 2 of my closest friends. One, Paul Rodriguez, the other, Josh Landon. Paul was a pro skateboarder. Josh was a surf filmmaker. The 3 of us had no experience in beer or business at all. And we were going out to start a brewery. We had to raise money to do it. Tall ask, right? Like, who would give us money? So we had to learn how to leverage the things that we did have to, 1, give us a competitive advantage, and 2, get people to see an opportunity that's unique in which they would invest in our crazy idea. And at the time, craft beer was just now starting to get into mainstream, right? So like parties, you were starting to see like, a Golden Road, like, 6-pack come up or something like other than Coors, Budweiser, Corona. So it started bleeding over and we saw an opportunity of this is a growing industry, which was 1, good. 2, coming from skate and surf, we get so good at marketing and storytelling because our products are all the same, that when we were looking at beer, nobody really marketed or nobody really had a brand. They were 100% relying on the product to sell their product. So somebody would go to the store, they look at the beer aisle, something would grab their eye, they try it. That's how beer was sold. So we went, okay, you know what? We know how to market products. We know how to tell stories that separate Nike from Adidas, when in theory, they're both the same shoe. So we applied that skill set that we had to really leverage the social media following we had. So this was 2012. There wasn't really influencer marketing, but we attacked this as, you know what, let's raise the majority of our money from surfers, skaters, and snowboarders, and we'll all get together and push this thing through our social. That's like firepower and leverage in itself. And so people that typically wouldn't have invested in us if we would have just said, hey, we love beer, we're going to start a brewery, went, you know what, they don't know a lot about beer, but they've established a team and they have a unique perspective on this and they're leveraging their following. This might be worth it. And so when we started the brewery, just being mixed with the perfect timing of social media influencers, we hit this thing running and the thing just exploded. So our problem from the second we opened doors, we couldn't keep up with demand. It was just a growth challenge the entire time, and ended up doing really well for us. We ended up selling it a little over 3 years after we opened doors, and it was an incredible ride. And then from that, moving on from beer, I was now stepping into a real estate fund in commercial real estate. It's like I had to start this leverage all over again. It's like, okay, cool, you're a skater, you have like a social media following and you did a brewery. Okay, that's weird and crazy, but like, what do you know about real estate? What do you know about managing a fund? What am I doing here? You know, so I had to learn how to leverage what I had built in the past to put myself in front of people that necessarily wouldn't give me that opportunity without leveraging what I had built. So the thing about leveraging, sorry to cut you off, the thing about leveraging gets you in the door. That's one thing you need to remember. You can leverage yourself to maybe get a conversation that you wouldn't have, but then you have to deliver on the conversation. So I could walk into a meeting and go, hey dude, I'm a pro skateboarder. I started this company, we sold it. And maybe somebody goes, ooh, this is interesting, I'm going to talk to this guy. And if I sit down and I'm just a moron, I can't get anything out, he's still not going to invest in my company. So the things you accomplished or the things that you're using to leverage, think about it as they just open the door. You still need to step up and deliver after that.
I love that. And it's not like it was just any brewery. Almost everybody's probably heard of this, called Saint Archer. You built a behemoth. And I think it's really cool that, you know, you got the people in your industry, other skaters, surfers, etc., to kind of be your marketing arm, and out the chute, you come out with more demand than you can even supply on, which I think, one, is something we've been talking about during this convention and will continue to do so, is just the power of influence. So that was a big asset of yours. You had your friends, they had eyeballs, and you guys all came out the chute and built something amazing.
Yeah. So on influence, if anybody hasn't read this book, Cialdini's Art of Influence or Art of Persuasion, such a good book to read. The story about kind of what you just mentioned, our friends being investors, I think is a cool story. So we had to raise $2.5 million, and me, Paul, and Josh had never raised money before. We didn't know how to do that. So we put together like our friends and family list, and the majority of people were pro skaters and surfers and snowboarders. So we raise all this money, and we're looking at like our marketing budget for the year, and it's small, and we're like really trying to be conservative about dollars. And I think it was Josh that said this. We're looking at it, and Josh goes, hey dude, what if like we all just like post this on everybody's social media? Like, could that be our marketing? And like, we don't have to spend the 150 grand we had for our marketing budget. And we were like, I don't know, maybe we could do that. It was like a full just trying to save money. And then we're like, all right, let's just try it. And basically we launched our brand and grew it and sold it all because of Instagram. And it sounds dumb now because everyone does that, but in 2012, no one did. And we kind of just like came across that one. Like that was just like a kind of a lucky stab at it, you know?
What a cool story. I love that.
Yeah.
So for those of us that are watching, if you have any questions for Mikey Taylor, go and throw them in the comment box. I'm kind of checking through those. You're getting a lot of love, but I don't see any questions yet. So if you have questions, go and throw them in. We'll see if anything comes up. So where do you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay, here you go. Here's a question. For someone, let's see, I just lost it. For someone that has literally just started in real estate in February, had one great month of hustling to enter into March and have this craziness happen, do you have any suggestions for what I can put my energy toward during this time? Most of my prospecting was coming from open houses and networking.
Yes. So this couldn't have happened at a better time for you, straight up. Look at this as you are now at the bottom and everything is upside for you. So this is seriously a phenomenal time. Right now, when there's uncertainty, there's opportunity, right? Like we all always hear about, or everybody always refers to Warren Buffett's quote, be fearful when those are greedy and only greedy when those are fearful, right? Right now, it's safe to say that people are fearful, and that is going to that's going to cause challenges and problems for people who are currently in real estate. So think of it like this. The more problems you can solve for people that are dealing with problems now, the more money you're going to make. So what do we have in front of us, right? If we're talking about, let's say apartment buildings, right? Well, if people aren't working and people aren't able to pay rents, well, income's not coming in, then you're not able to pay your debt. And so what happens? You possibly forfeit on your building, right? So you're going to see possibly renter or owners not being able to support their business or their apartment. So you're going to see new opportunities come up on the market. You're going to see buyers that are potentially scared to move forward because of the uncertainty. And you're going to see an issue with lenders. So out of those three things, where does the opportunity lie? There's going to be cash buyers in this. There's going to be people that are looking for opportunity. So one, you can be the person that finds the opportunity and brings it to the person looking, or you can find opportunity in the person that has the asset that's trying to keep his apartment afloat during this, or you could put together something for tenants. That's a little bit different than being specific to real estate, but tenants, if they're having a hard time paying rent, there's going to have to be some solution for them. So I would say, look for opportunity in this office space, right? Here's another one. All these companies now went digital, right? Our office went digital last week. And so there's going to be a lot of companies that are realizing that you don't need to be in physical businesses to operate your business. So what happens to office space? Do they get sold? Is there a discount there? Is there a repurposed play? There's going to be transition that happens because of the coronavirus. And this, I'm telling you, this is going to be a massive wealth building moment, right? This is where all the wealth is created in the next 2 to 4 years during this. So this is a great time for you. Don't panic. This is awesome. Let me say this. This is awesome for opportunity for where you're at. I don't want to say this is awesome. This sucks for a lot of people. This is going to be painful and change a lot of our lives. But there is opportunity for you as your career goes.
I love it. I'll also do to that real quick, and we have some questions. I got into the business in 2008 in real estate, worst possible time, but it was one of the biggest blessings, dude. It was only up from there. So for the person that asked that, you're in the right place. Just don't give up. Wes Ives has a question. Mike, who's your biggest influencer? Do you have coaches, or who do you follow that lifts you up?
Good question. I had somebody come into my life when I was 19, when I told my parents I was going to be a pro skateboarder, and they pretty much panicked because I wasn't going to go to college, and they gave me an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was, the only way you could be a pro skateboarder is if you go talk to Randy, and Randy helps you with your money. And Randy ran a multifamily office, so he managed a ton of different families' money. And my parents' idea was, if you can convince this guy to help you with your finances, then we're okay with you being a pro skateboarder. And so he came into my life at 19 and started teaching me about financial literacy, started teaching me about investing. And ultimately, I learned how money worked and how I was going to use that to get myself in a better scenario after skateboarding ended. And he's been, from the point of being 19 to now, one of my partners in Commune, one of my biggest role models and mentors through the last 2 decades. He's probably the biggest on that end. And then I do have people in my circle that I look to for guidance, or if I'm ever just like struggling with a decision, I always reach out to people. I never do everything myself. Like, I like getting people's feedback, and that really helps me formulate the best decision for myself. So having people, guidance, mentors, it's pretty powerful.
Love that. David Martin wants to know, what are your top 3 book recommendations?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the most powerful book I read, I would say, is Rich Dad Poor Dad. My dad made me read it when I went through this, when I became a pro skateboarder. My wife made me read it when I was 25 while we were still dating. And then I read it again a couple years ago. I think that's a great book just to change your mindset on what's in front of you. I really like the book Think and Grow Rich. I liked the book Principles a lot. I would probably say those are my 3 go-tos. Awesome. And then Art of Influence, actually, for anyone who's in entrepreneurship or marketing or sales, that book it's a little dry and a little hard to get through, but you'll learn a lot from it as far as learning how to communicate a message where people resonate with it and then want to end up working with you.
So Anthony has a funny question for you. He wants to know, who's a better skater, you or, I don't know how to pronounce this, Kevion?
Kevion.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I got Kevion all day, man. So Kevion's he's my brother. Kevion knows how to skateboard, legitimate skateboard. He's in the real estate world now. He has a company, Case. Really, really cool guy. But yeah, man, I eat Kevion up all day.
All right, we'll do a couple more questions. Jessica wants to know, how are you positioning yourself with the current circumstances and for the next few years? Are you looking at new areas as investments?
Good call. Good question. So for us, this is a good thing to talk about. We are long-term investors. We buy and hold things. And whenever you look at buying a new asset, especially in the last few years, the biggest uncertainty was, is there going to be a recession? Is there going to be a correction while I'm holding this property? And so we've always just been mindful of that and really stress test each deal so that the deal still made sense if we see a massive drop in rents. So as far as the assets that we're holding now, we're in a pretty good spot for that, mixed with, we always sit on a pretty significant cash reserve for situations just like this. So we look at it more as being here for the long term, which investors might suffer a little bit of return if you're looking at people who are just crazy leverage right now, or were, but we're in a good position to get through it. Where we're seeing opportunities, truthfully, and this sounds weird, for the last probably week, there's still a lot of uncertainties that we're waiting to see what happens on before we move forward on deals. One being what we talked about with rents. We're seeing what this next month looks like as far as rents coming in. If there's a significant drop, we're going to have to bake that into our numbers. The good thing right now is this is a buyer's market now in my mind. It was a seller's market for a long time, and us as buyers pretty much had to agree to any type of term. That's not the case anymore. So specifically in multifamily apartments, the due diligence phase was seriously like this. It was like 10 days on like a 30-day close. It was ridiculous. So now we're in a position to go, we're spreading that due diligence phase out really long here. We want to see how March looks. We want to see how April looks. And we're baking in for the next year, no growth, very close to zero. So I would say at this time, there's still some uncertainty, but there is going to be opportunity for sure. The people who sit along on the sides, they'll miss out on this, but being really cautious and prudent right now, at least for the next, I think, few weeks is going to be key.
I agree. Matt wants to know, are you taking advantage of the drop in the stock market by purchasing mutual funds or other individual stocks?
I am not. I'll be very transparent with everybody. My portfolio is very, very basic. It is pretty much real estate and cash. I have had money in the stock market before. I ended up selling everything the second week of January. not because I was predicting the stock market crash. It ended up working out really well. But with stocks, I don't want to talk bad about it because there's a lot of money to be made there. That was just never my thing. There was something about the stock market that I personally, I couldn't follow it and understand it the way I needed to succeed at it. Now, I do have advisors that have helped me with money in the stock market in the past, but the further I go along, the more I actually make it a little bit more black and white on my end. That's specific to each person, though. Not don't take that as you have to follow what I'm doing. There's a lot of people that invest the right way in the stock market that do well. To follow that, with the investor I am, and if I was going to take advantage of the stock market right now, I wouldn't even be trying to like find the low and then sell on the high. Like, I'm such a long-term guy. I would seriously just put it in now and then continue to put it in next year, and then next year, then next year is more my style. But yeah, some really smart guys are going to make a lot of money in this next couple weeks. Yeah.
Cool. Looks like we got all the other questions. Haley wants to know if you're better than P-Rod.
No, I wish. P-Rod is the best skateboarder pretty much of he is the best skateboarder of my generation, but he's arguably one of the best skateboarders of all time. And that wasn't me. I was a pro skateboarder because of work ethic and obsession, not because I was the most talented.
All right, last question and then we'll break. Any advice for married couples? This is from Zap. Any advice for married couples where one half is more investor, rich dad mindset than the spouses?
Yes, this is a good one. So a lot of times, and I went through this with my wife and it didn't work well while we did this. My wife grew up in a very emotional household when it came to money. So she didn't like talking about money with me. So for the first 8 years of our marriage, I was in charge of all finance, all investing. She was completely in the dark. And that actually presented itself as a challenge for us because in a marriage, it's not I got one thing and you get the other. The more that you do as one unit, the more successful you're going to be. So I had to learn how to communicate with her about what we were doing with our money in a way which she could hear it. And even if like she wasn't interested, I still needed to tell her about it so she was on the same page with decisions we were going to make, because these decisions impact both of us. So for you specifically, if you're making all the financial decisions and she's in the dark and one doesn't work well or doesn't work out, and that impacts your family, you're going to be dealing with a whole different type of challenge where, as opposed, if you guys were both in the decision making together, even if she leaned at you as being the leader of what you're doing on your finances, just for her to know what's going on and go, okay, I'm with that. Anything that happens pro or con, you guys made a team effort or a group decision to get there. I think that's pretty powerful.
Great advice. I think that's it.
And I will say this well too. Even if your partner doesn't want to talk about money, like you see this on the budgeting side as well. If your partner goes, I'm not analytical, you just take care of this, I don't want to do this, don't let them do that. You become really good at starting the conversation and make it more around, hey, you don't have to be the one that's like on every line item. You don't have to be in the weeds. I just want to just tell you from a high level what's going on. It'll bless your marriage for sure.
Love that. Any other thoughts before we break, my dude?
Biggest thought, I would say, we are going to get through this. The world is not going to end, and you're going to see a lot of great people and great companies come out of this current challenge that we're in. So don't get discouraged. We're strong. We as people are so resilient. We're going to be fine through this.
Appreciate that, bro. You're always bringing the heat. Can't thank you enough for sharing your time on behalf of myself, Andrew, and all of the people at Quarantine Convention. We appreciate you. Wishing you the best of luck on whatever you do next. And hopefully I see you soon.
All right, brother. Thank you.
All right, bro.